Welcome to the Founders Focus podcast, an open conversation with TECHCORPS founder Gary Beach and those who care about the future of technology. For more than 25 years, TECHCORPS has worked to ensure K through 12th grade students in the United States have equal access to technology programs, skills, and resources that enhance early learning and prepare them for college or career. We'd like to welcome you to our Computer Science Education Week edition of Founders Focus.
CS Ed Week is an annual call to action to inspire K-12 students to learn computer science, advocate for equity in computer science education, and celebrate the contributions of students, teachers, and parents to the field. I want to introduce our guests. From Hyland Software, headquartered in Westlake, Ohio, joining us is John Phelan, Executive Vice President and Chief Product Officer. Also from Hyland, which is annually ranked by Gartner as one of the best firms in its Magic Quadrant of the categories of content services platform provider, is Tracy Petrakis, Community Engagement Manager at Hyland. And from TECHCORPS, I'd like to welcome National Executive Director Lisa Chambers. Welcome everyone, and thank you for being part of today's discussion. Since this is CS Ed Week, I'd like to have a conversation today about how Hyland and TECHCORPS are partnering to bring together high quality computer science learning experiences to elementary and middle school students. But first, John and Tracy, please tell our audience a little bit about Hyland Software, what your company does, its size, its locations, whatever you think would be important for listeners to know.
Sure. Thanks, Gary, for having us today. Hyland Software is a 30-year-old company this year. Actually, coming up here in just a couple of days, we'll formally celebrate our 30th anniversary. It's about 4,000 employees around the globe, with 30 offices. And obviously, post-pandemic, we've got a lot of folks that are working out of their home offices, as well as those who still come into a facility that we have. We've got 16,000 customers. They're the reason that those 4,000 employees come to work every single day. Ultimately, is to serve our customers and help them solve the business challenges that they have. The space that we work in is called content services. It's been called many things over the years. But the simplest way that I describe it to my kids is, we talk about the paperless office of the future. And it's technology like ours that will enable those organizations to achieve that. They can, store lots of information, whether it be things that used to be paper, reports that might come in that get scanned, or check images, all the way up to things like CAT scans and X-rays that you might have if you go to a hospital. Storing and managing and making that information available to users when they need it, when they need to make those decisions, is really where we focus. Bringing that together with all of our process capabilities. For us, it's about enabling folks to be able to make the decisions that they need to make quickly and efficiently. And as I said, for us, it's all about customers. You hear a lot in technology that the value of the work for me in my department's agile processes is when a customer gets to use the software and it gets to make a difference in the way that they do business, whether that's taking care of a patient, processing a claim, or helping some other aspect of their business. That's really what we're all here to do every single day.
And you've been there for 23 of those 30 years.
Yeah, my 23rd anniversary is coming up March 15th. I started here when I was 22 years old, and it really is the only job I've ever known. My best friend actually dropped out of high school when I was 15 and came to work at Hyland when there were 8 employees. So I rode my BMX bike to Hyland's second ever office. So I've known about the company for almost the entirety of its 30-year history.
Oh, wow. Thank you for telling us about yourself and the firm. Tracy, maybe you could add a little bit from the community engagement side. We know Hyland has 16,000 customers, 4,000 employees. Tell us what you do.
Happy to. So I am our community engagement manager, and I think it's helpful to know, going back our now 30 years of existence, and that giving back, that community engagement focus has has really been woven into the fabric of Hyland. It's been part of our DNA since our inception, really. And before it was even a staffed role, this work was happening at I guess you could say, kind of a grassroots level, and it was very employee driven, and remains that way today. So our programs kind of started out as, hey, this Highlander is really involved with this great community organization. Let's support them in that work. Or there's a community organization that needs some volunteers. Let's send some Highlanders their way. And then, as I said, it kind of evolved into this thing of, hey, we have a matching gifts program, and we have a volunteer time off program, and we have a great day of service. And so again, it was really very organic. So again, once it became a fully staffed role, we formalized these programs, and again, have continued to be really employee focused in this work, and supporting our employees and their passions, and allowing them to feel like Hyland is supporting their whole being. You know, we would love to kind of help them support their passions, as opposed to ever being a barrier to that work or that part of their lives. So again, I feel super lucky to be a part of this great company.
Well, prepping for the call, I was impressed with the culture of Hyland Software, and you kind of referenced it there a moment ago. When they're not employees, they're called Highlanders. I mean, right. It's so important. John, in terms of you've been 23 years, how did Hyland determine that technology education was part of that culture, how it wanted to give back to the community? How'd you get that started? Maybe you could share a couple of thoughts with us.
Sure. So I think Tracy's right. We've had this culture of giving back to the community really as long as I can remember. But, as we started to think about how we wanted to formalize that, and we've done that in many different ways. But, the one area that we kept going back to was, we've got a lot of really smart technologists at Hyland. And, I think, certainly for myself, but I believe many others believe that if we can create that spark for a youngster, that, we could create the opportunity for them to, become engaged, to become passionate about the space in which we work. And we're just really big believers that a rising tide lifts all boats. And so, being able to, have kids be able to, just learn a little bit about technology, and how that can ultimately become a career opportunity for them is just really key for us. I mean, to be honest, there's a small part of it that's self-serving, right? We're in Cleveland, Ohio. It's not the tech mecca of the world, and so having folks that grew up in our area that wanted to call Cleveland home. We feel really great about the city where we live and the state where we live. And we've got great Midwestern values to be able to, create more tech opportunities for kids in our region. That's really cool, right? Because we're not Silicon Valley where, everyone probably grows up, dreaming of working in the tech sector. And so to be able to do that a little bit in our own hometown makes a big difference. And I'll say, from my vantage point, a lot of it too was really employee driven. We had some really passionate Highlanders that, started a tech, what we called a tech club, where we actually started teaching classes on how to, program, or how to, work on a network. I can remember I used to be our CIO. I actually personally taught a class of how to build a computer. How do you take parts? We ordered a bunch of parts from our procurement team, and I think we had 10 kids in that class to actually learn how to put the CPU in the socket, and how to put silver paste on it, and how to put a heat sink on it, and wire up hard drives and memory, and install an operating system, all just to give kids that opportunity to learn and to see. I think back, something I think I've shared with Lisa. For me, I was in 6th or 7th grade, and I had the opportunity to go down to CSU with Cleveland State University here in Cleveland. And I went to what they call their Ivory Tower. It's their big building downtown. And I was up on some high floor, and I went down for a day and literally stared at a green screen terminal where, students and faculty requested information, that was stored on tape. and it literally would pop up on the green screen. You'd run over to a big carousel and grab a tape, put it in a drive, and then tell the system what drive you put it in. You know, in 2021, we probably all hear that story and say, oh my God, that would be the most abysmal thing to do every single day. That little thing, though, for me was a spark that said, this is really cool. I love the idea of being able to, you know, put my hands on it, on information, be able to enable others to be able to do their things more effectively. And that just started the snowball. And so, you know, for us at Hyland, you know, given that we've just naturally got a lot of talents and a lot of skills with technically smart folks, it made a lot of sense for us. And again, just, you know, having our kind of Midwestern values, you know, wanting to kind of, you know, rise the tide for the entirety of the region in which we live, it was a great way for us to be able to give back.
Well, I've always thought Cleveland, in comparison to Silicon Valley, was certainly a lot cooler. You do have the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Silicon Valley does not. But to your point, I have several grandchildren, and it just amazes me what they do, 2 and 3 year olds, and I try to imagine what it's going to be like for them 20, 30 years, you know, down the road. Lisa, let's get you in on the conversation. We've heard from Tracy and John. When TECCOR first began its relationship with Hyland in 2013, what were your hopes for the partnership, and how have those hopes evolved and developed over these past 9 years?
Well, it's hard to believe that it's been that long, but this has been a great partnership. TECCOR was expanding for the first time in Northeast Ohio. And so we were trying to get the lay of the land and just figuring out who was doing what, and kept hearing about this company called Hyland Software. And so, of course, for us, we thought once we learned about Hyland and the work that they were doing, but most importantly, their commitment to community and giving back, we wanted to reach out and introduce ourselves, and not just started conversations with their community engagement team. And it was, you know, it really was a process of building a relationship. So we didn't immediately go in with an ask, and they didn't have an ask of us. It was kind of like, well, let's just figure out, you know, what we're doing and how because the one thing that we share is we're committed to improving community and doing that through the lens of technology and focused on kiddos. And so, you know, early on, it started out with getting Highlanders involved in TECCOR as volunteers. It evolved into actually having Highlanders support some of our techie clubs, our after-school programs in Cleveland and in Westlake. And then, you know, kind of just moved from there. And I think the one thing about this partnership is it's always been about a relationship, you know, and we'd hope a mutually beneficial relationship, right, for the sake of community. And so, you know, over the years, I think we didn't force it. We didn't have a really prescribed way. We just said, we're going to stay connected. We're going to keep talking. And so we were very intentional about a couple of times a year, we would just sit down and, you know, and they would tell us kind of what they had going on. We tell them what we had going on. And then we'd see where that conversation took us. And a lot of times it came to, oh, there's some natural intersections here, you know, and if we come together, we can have an even bigger impact on kids in our community. And so that, I think for us, that is exactly the way that we want to work with our corporate partners. And this has been a fantastic example about two organizations that are trying to improve community, and when they come together, you know, the impact that they can have.
And you're both listening to each other. Although I did listening to you, but maybe following Tracy and John and having Highlanders, you can call the staff at TECCOR TECCORians.
Right.
Would that work? I don't know, probably not. But Tracy, in prepping for our conversation, I was impressed with all the work you're doing, and Hyland, as you and John know, as the last couple of years has developed a corporate social responsibility strategy. What was the impetus that launched this project, and what were its results?
And I'm really excited about the work that we've been doing. So the corporate social responsibility now steering committee that we formed really was born out of a couple of conversations that were happening in early 2019 with a couple of our executives who were, always really invested in this work and passionate about it and wanted to see it continue. But, we had all of these kind of questions of, are we making a difference? Are we making an impact? What are all of the kind of maybe sort of disparate programs that we have running, from community engagement, again, the employee-driven style programs, through tech outreach, and how can we kind of get a handle on what it is we're doing, what impact we're having, if any, on our communities, and maybe where we can strengthen that work. So got this group of folks together that were interested in this work and maybe involved with it in some way, and did an internal audit of our programs. Again, how many folks are involved year over year? Where is our funding going? Again, what maybe data and measurement and results are we seeing from any of these programs, again, if any? And use that as an opportunity to say, okay, where's Hyland uniquely positioned to make an impact? Like John said earlier, we have employees that have amazing technical skills. And again, we're a technology company. So over the course of the last 2.5 years through a pandemic, we kept meeting and we kept having these great conversations about this work and how we can kind of strengthen our investment, and really homed in on this focus of building and inspiring careers in technology. So a major result of this project with this committee was identifying our mission and figuring out, okay, now we have that identified. Let's find some really great partners to continue to advance this work and strengthen our investment and our commitment in this space.
That's all good. John, why? It seems to me Highlanders are pretty committed folk. Why was it important for Hyland Software to bring TECHCORPS into its CSR strategy?
Yeah, so as I look at the work that I've had an opportunity to be a part of with TECHCORPS, I think it offers us a couple of different things. One, it still offers us an ability for Highlanders to be engaged, and that's something that's really important to us. Lisa talked about how our folks have worked on techie clubs and in other places with TECHCORPS, and sometimes we do a lot to create our own curriculum at times, but at other times it's great to be able to take a really well polished, well honed curriculum and concept, and be able to bring that to bear with our smart folks, and that helps us in terms of being an accelerant to being able to help kids. I think the other thing is that we know we have this challenge, not just here in Cleveland, Ohio, but around the whole U.S., really around the world, and how do we enable this next generation? And I think about we've run like Girls Who Code classes where web page class that was taught by all women who work for us, that are practitioners in our engineering world. And we know we've got to reach audiences that aren't frankly the Westlake, Ohio kids where I grew up, but that come from all different parts of life and different opportunities, and I think that creates some great new things. And then I think the last thing I'll say is, like, even during this pandemic, hearing Lisa talk about the way that TECHCORPS is reaching kids during the pandemic, that's a whole nother level that I just don't know that we could. I remember and actually just recently had a conversation with the woman who runs all of our tech clubs. I remember having to cancel those because the pandemic hit and we didn't want to have non-employees in our buildings, and then we ended up not wanting to even have employees in our buildings, and trying to figure out how do we reach kids during that time was really tough. And obviously the smart folks who come in every day at TECHCORPS thinking about this, they rallied and came up with some great ideas and delivered some great capabilities that might not have been quite the same as sitting in a room behind a computer, but still give us the opportunity to reach kids at just a broader level than we can possibly do still as a little software company in Cleveland, Ohio. And so it gives us that great reach. And so those are three really big things for me that I think just give us an ability to kind of do more, and ultimately, be able to be an accelerant.
A little software company in Northeast Ohio that continually is in the top magic quadrant of Gartner. You guys are rocking it. Without really getting off into too much of a tangent, I know, Tracy, you were talking to Brenda Miller on TECH CORPS staff recently. You were talking about your efforts in Poland with Highlanders in Poland. Just briefly, are the challenges that you're seeing around the world similar to the challenges in computer science education we're seeing in the United States?
Sure. Yeah. And John knows much more about our efforts and our Highlanders in Poland. But yes, we do have quite a presence in Poland now, and seeing that group of Highlanders really growing. And as you said, I think we're seeing the same, and John said it as well, we're seeing the same challenges in the space of computer science education here and everywhere. So we're excited to figure out how to engage Highlanders globally in this work. Again, to a little bit self-serving, have a future pipeline of talent for Hyland as well, and bring more Highlanders into our family. But again, also to support those employees that we currently have in their passions and their interest in giving back and in community engagement efforts. I think that we definitely have an opportunity within all of our communities to do more. So I think, again, having this strategy and having this partnership with TECH CORPS, I think we've always learned something from TECH CORPS and from Lisa. And again, like Lisa mentioned, this relationship has just really been a great collaboration, and we've had a really patient progression in our relationship. And it just feels like this a kind of expanded partnership is just like the right fit at the right time. So I think we're going to learn a lot from it, and we'll be able to bring that to other communities.
Well said. We also do a lot of learning from Lisa at TECH CORPS. It's amazing. And that's a good segue into a question for you, Lisa. You've worked with several corporate partners in TECH CORPS' pursuit to ensure more K-12 students have access to high quality computer science programs. How do you feel Hyland's intentionality is paying off for the students that Tracy and John have talked about?
Well, I think I remember when Tracy and Lisa reached out about their new strategy and the work that they had put into it as a company to really be intentional about the work that they wanted to do and how this connected. It was exciting to hear. It was exciting to know that a company, I mean, right, giving back is not really part of their bottom line, right? It's not their core service. And yet they've invested so much time in really thinking about how, as an organization, they want to make sure that they're also benefiting the communities in which they have employees and offices. And so, so again, I think just being able to have those conversations and thinking about the areas where we can come together and we can do great work and as John mentioned, do more than we could accomplish if we were on our own, right? And so it's exciting to think about how Hyland has been growing and how they have employees all over the world now. And early on in that, Tracy and her colleague were asking, how can we involve them? What can we do? And a couple of years ago, we did a thing where we had Highlanders kind of Zoom into classrooms for teachers during Computer Science Education Week. And so, they could be anywhere and they could drop into a classroom anywhere. So I think it's those types of things that we just continue to think about. Here they have all of these wonderfully smart people that are also passionate about giving back and inspiring the next generation. And there are so many ways that we can do that. And with a partner like Hyland and a relationship like I feel like we've established, I can call and say, hey, I got a crazy idea. and we'll turn it into something great. And so it's just a great partnership and a great model, I think, for how you want to have relationship between nonprofit organizations and corporations, so that it's not, we just show up once a year, we get a check and we take a picture and then we go our separate ways and we don't talk for another 12 months. I think this is the way that we really can make some significant, some long-term difference in our community, positive difference.
And you are. I mean, in the 25 years plus that we have run Tech Corp, there's been numbers of times, you and I, Lisa, have both seen where a company will get excited about jumping in, and then a year and a half later, there's a change in management or what have you, and it just doesn't work. But John, you're obviously part of the C-suite at Hyland Software. How does the C-suite discuss the return on investment that Hyland Software is getting with its partnership at Tech Corp?
There's a couple things that come to mind. One, there's a tiny bit of it that is self-serving, right? And that is that we want to make sure that we've got great candidates for the future. We know that there's only going to be more and more tech jobs as the future unfolds, and we've got a small part to play in helping to create that spark for someone to be able to head down this path. So that certainly is a part. At the same time, we also believe really strongly that a rising tide lifts all boats, which for us is, if we can have a more vibrant community, here in Northeast Ohio, or in Ohio in general, or around the U.S., for tech companies, that's going to be good for all of us. It's going to create opportunities for folks on our team who might be looking to stretch their legs and do something different. It's going to create opportunities for folks that are on those teams potentially to look to a Hyland for a next step in their career, whatever it might be. That is good for all of us. But I think beyond all of that, for me, for sure, and I certainly think my peers, it's about serving our employees incredibly well. And our team, at Hyland, and I can't really put my finger on exactly why, but they're just wired to want to give back. And, whether that is, I myself, when we do our, annual day of service, I find myself at the food bank downtown, and it's sorting out foods that came in from local grocery stores, probably because my mom works at our local food bank here in the community in which I live, that serves those that financially just can't do that. And the same time, I'm not alone. There's just in Cleveland here, there are hundreds, many hundreds. I think last time I heard was 500-600 people take part in that day of service, and our employees want to give back. And they want to be supported in giving back. And, we're at the end of the day, just really big believers that, taking care of our customers is really, job number one for all of us. And happy employees take care of customers better than, unhappy employees. And so, for us to be able to, have an incredible combination of being able to, serve our communities and helping to make them better around us, while at the same time being able to serve our employees and giving them the freedom and the ability and really the sometimes financial support to go and support the causes that they're passionate about. That's a win for everybody there. And anytime you can find something that is a win for the community, it's a win for our people, and it ultimately becomes a win for the company. That's the kind of thing that's easy to get behind. Before when you were talking, Gary, about companies sometimes come in for a year or two and they have a change in management and go another way. Like now I've only worked at Hyland as a professional, but I can't ever fathom that happening here, because it's just so much a part of who we are. And frankly, I'll say it feels just so much a part of, who our region is, and we talk about, we're different than a lot of companies. Sometimes people chalk it up to our Midwestern values and just wanting to be open and honest and, engaging with others. It's just a really strong part of the DNA at Hyland. And, And I think it fits really well for us to be able to serve. And, this partnership, as I said before, just helps us serve that much better.
And customers see that culture that you have nurturing out there in Westlake Village, Ohio. It has to permeate, to those customers. And you mentioned jobs. I'm sure also if we jumped on the job board right now, there's probably open jobs at Hyland Software, and collectively all the efforts of companies like yours and TECCOR, what have you, filling those open jobs, I think pays benefits also. Thank you, John. Tracy, I want to ask you about your partner. How do you hope your partnership with TECCOR will bring and is bringing meaningful change to growing a diverse pipeline of STEM talent, which is a big challenge in our country? And it's I saw a report this morning from IDC. It was just eye-opening in terms of the gaps we see in terms of STEM education. So what do you see there in terms of how that our partnership with TECCOR is growing, bridging, building that diverse pipeline of STEM talent?
I think that this is definitely a place where we see that TECCOR is the right partner because our missions are really aligned as it relates to providing access to, that's TECCOR's mission, to providing access to high quality computer science education programs for all students, thus growing our pipeline of diverse talent. And I think, we as Hyland understand that TECCOR has the pulse on the communities in which they operate. They know where the gaps are, where the programs or the investment are needed in order to bring computer science education to schools, to students who need it and who might otherwise not have the exposure to it. And I think another point that Lisa has made in the conversations that we've had about tech education and guiding students to careers in tech has been this idea of showing students the varieties of industries in which tech talent is needed. You can still follow your passions through a career in technology. Again, we've chatted about this a number of times, but take kids' passion for sports. Not every student is going to be LeBron James or, Baker Mayfield or whoever it might be, but there is technology in the sports world. There's technology that's used in the development of sports equipment or data analytics to help improve an athlete's game. And the same can be said for a career in fashion or in media or environmental sustainability, whatever it might be. There's so many pathways to a career in technology that doesn't involve, giving up on your interests or your passions again. So I think I've always appreciated that TECCOR highlights this. And I think it'll be how we continue to engage students from all of our communities. Again, it's like meeting kids where they are and tapping into what their interests are to kind of guide them to, hey, you can have those passions and still learn about how you can get involved in that industry through technology. And that's always been really exciting.
Yeah, regrettably, for me as a sports fan, I think sometimes there's too much analytics.
Yeah, right.
Just give me the box score of the baseball game. Thank you very much.
Fair argument.
But well said. Yeah, as I was listening, I was just recalling some of the data from IDC, which claimed by 2022, just around the corner, we've all been talking about the digitization of the global economy. Well, IDC says in early 2022, 60% of the world's economy will be GDP will be digitized. Only 30% of the American workforce have the digital skills to compete in that economy, and 16% of our workforce do not know or have access to do things like electronic mail, what have you. It's a lot of work to be done, and partnerships like Hyland Software and TECCOR are making that happen. John, you've kind of talked about this a bit, but just maybe to amplify, you joined the board at TECCOR about a year ago. And as we've heard from you and Tracy here today, Hyland employees, these Highlanders have been volunteering in the community for years. maybe just expand a little bit more on how the company is impacted by serving that community. What, how are you able, to really dig in there and help the communities beyond, I assume, Westfield Lake, right?
Yep. Yeah. So I think back to my own journey to before I joined the board. I probably drove Tracy nuts and some others in HR in the past because they've, worked with me on board matching opportunities before. And, frankly, we would just go down this path of that ultimately wasn't fruitful, right? In finding something that I wanted to do. And, for me, the simple reason was it was really important that, something that I'm going to work on, I have to have a personal passion for. I know some executives just, want to be on a board because it's the right thing to add to your resume. It's the right thing to do to network. For me, I've got a young family at home, right? I've got a 10-year-old son and a 14-year-old daughter and a wife. And, anytime that I, don't spend at work, I want to be spending with them. And so if I'm going to take some of that time away to do something different, it's got to be really meaningful. And, I think, I, for myself, certainly found that with TECCOR, a really good alignment of my own personal, my own personal passions and my own personal interests. And, I think that's where Hyland has done a great job overall, whether it be, Tracy and Lisa and another lady at Hyland who helped me find TECCOR, like whether it be them helping me do that or helping others find ways to give back, or folks finding their own ways, through whatever their own creative means are and the things that they're interested in. Being able to, make those around us better is just going to help everyone. I know, being based in Cleveland, there's a long time, and frankly, even still today, we're a manufacturing city at heart in many people's minds. And, being able to, create the opportunities for folks to be able to, give back and to, help make the city, a part of that, digital future. I think about, one of the guys who works directly for me has been here at Hyland, just as long as I have, actually a little bit longer. And, he serves on something called the Right Board here in Cleveland, Ohio, which is focused on, providing technology capabilities, to, folks in the Northeast Ohio area. And, I went to one of their board meetings as a guest and, heard about, their a program that they were running to try and give internet to folks that, live in the inner city that don't have access to internet. So you talked, Gary, before about IDC saying 15% of Americans don't have access to email. Like, how do you do that, right? And so, great programs like that, supporting individuals as they pursue their own passions. And, while I know we've certainly, talked a lot about tech today here, this investment is across the board. We really do, while the organizationally we have a focus on, giving back in tech and helping to create, opportunities for youngsters to get that spark to move down that path. I know of, many others who either make donations supported by Hyland as well, serve on boards supported by Hyland as well, in areas that have nothing to do with tech because it's important to them. One of the guys who, I mentored years ago and is now a vice president for us, has a sister that has Down syndrome. And so he, sits on a board called the Upside of Downs. And, lots of great ways to give back. I say all the time to my team, it takes all of us to be successful. And that, when I say that to them, I'm really saying that to say that it doesn't matter whether you're the most talented engineer that we have, you're the newest engineer that we have. It doesn't matter what your role is. It takes all of us, whether you're, the guy or the gal answering the phone, all the way to the folks that create the technology or run it in our production environments and SaaS. It takes all of us to be successful. But the reality is that phrase to me is also far broader than Hyland software. We're an ecosystem, in America. We're an ecosystem in a global population, and we've got to serve everyone well. And whether that's our mission in tech or my own personal passions around that, or serving the communities in other areas. Those are all really good for the company, really good for the communities in which we live, and ultimately, kind of fulfill, our mission to give back. I know, certainly many at Hyland, certainly myself, we feel incredibly, we feel like we've got incredible opportunities to, come to work every day, work with great people, make a great living, provide for our families. And, just being able to give back and create those opportunities for others, or give them a little bit of something to smile about when they might not otherwise have something to smile about. Those things make a big difference. I feel like I kind of got off your question there, but it's for us, it is really about being able to create those opportunities just to make everybody around us better, because I do think it takes all of us to succeed, whether that's all of us in the product organization at Hyland, or all of the Hylanders to make Hyland software work, but really all of us as people to make the communities work that we live in.
Do you have your annual customer conference in Scotland?
We don't know.
But sorry for that. We're getting a little tight on time here at the end. But thinking of what you just said, John, I was very impressed. And it takes all of us to be successful. And in our final question, start with you, Tracy. I'd like each of you to comment on the partnership between Hyland Software and TECH Corps. And what advice would you give to others who are beginning to think about how they can work to ensure K-12 students in our country have access to computer science learning experiences, the internet, what have you? What would be one or two things that you would point out that are important to developing a partnership with any kind of nonprofit?
I think that you definitely have to find the right nonprofit partner whose values and missions align with your own, and who's willing to have a really collaborative relationship. Again, I know I've mentioned this already, but I think what makes us really work so well together is that, Lisa and her team at TECH Corps can trust that Hyland is committed to giving back and to supporting the work that they do, and to listening to your expertise and where you feel like the investment or the programs are needed. And in turn, we trust that TECH Corps has that expertise, has the bandwidth to execute on these really great programs and to make a difference. So again, I think it's listening to each other, having a really trusting relationship, and going back to what Lisa mentioned earlier, don't rush it. You don't have to come to your first meeting saying this is what we want to do, and let's go out and do it. I think it takes time and conversations and just times where you get together and you just kind of talk and brainstorm and think of really fun, crazy, great ideas and see what you can make work together.
Well said. I particularly like the comment on trust. Lisa, what would be your take on what it takes to have a good partnership?
Well, I agree with everything Tracy just said, that I think that this relationship is like any relationship, that you have to, make sure that you're communicating and that you have trust in each other and in the intentions of what it is that you're trying to do. And I will just say, Gary, I'll take this opportunity to tell you that what this is, we've been working together since 2013, but we're so excited to announce a new partnership and a new way that we're going to be working together. And I think this is a first for Hyland, who has now made a 5-year commitment to TECH Corps. And together over the next 5 years, we are going to be developing some new programs that look at the intersection between computer science and sports. And so with kind of a focus around data analytics. And so that's going to be the development of some new techie camps for our elementary and middle school kiddos, some new lessons around data and analytics that we're going to be integrating into our after school techie clubs. And not only developing that new content, but also expanding our geographic footprint. So we're going to be able to take some Tech Corps programs into some of the communities where Hyland has employees and facilities for the first time. And so, over the next 5 years, we're going to have a chance to impact more than, I think it's 1,500 kiddos. So we're just super excited to launch this partnership and to see where it takes us and what new things that we'll discover and learn about each other as we go.
No, thank you, Lisa. And thank you, John, for the commitment and Tracy of Hyland Software to Tech Corps over the next several years. Very much appreciated. And as the Chief Product Officer and as an EVP, I'm going to give you the last word, John, in terms of what advice would you give to other Chief Product Officers who would be looking to start a partnership with whomever? What are the key ingredients that make the magic sauce?
Well, I think partnership is, as both Lisa and Tracy have talked about, is really important. As both of them said it so eloquently, I think about our own business, and I'm sure the engineers on my team would love to think that our customers buy our product because it's great technology. And don't get me wrong, that's a part of it. But we often say that people buy from people. They buy from people that they can build a relationship with. They can buy from people that they trust are going to follow through and make sure that the job gets done well. And so, while, I've only had the opportunity to know Lisa probably for maybe 2 years now since her and I first spoke, it's easy to tell in just a few minutes why, Lisa is successful in the role that she is, because, very quickly you can build that trust and be comfortable that, she's wicked smart and she knows what she's talking about and how to serve, her communities. And that is just really important. And I think that the second thing that I would say is, we've talked about a lot of things that Hyland does. We didn't start here, right? We didn't start with, our first thing being a 5-year commitment to Tech Corps. As Tracy said, we kind of walked this journey, over a long period of time, both with Tech Corps and really with our giving in general. And so, if I was going to give a singular piece of advice to someone, it's find a way to start, in, whatever that might be, wherever your, personal passions are as an individual, whatever your organizational passions are. If you find a way to start, things can bloom from there. Our CEO, Bill Premer, will often, say something that is good for me to remind myself of, and that is, doing things leads to other things, right? And sometimes we say that when we sell a bad piece of business that maybe we don't make as much money on or any money on as we would have planned. But doing nothing leads to nothing. And so, if we sell something and, have a tough go, we might learn from that. If we sell something and don't make any money, but we get a happy customer, they might be a referral for that. So doing something leads to something, doing nothing leads to nothing. And so, I would just say, get started, no matter how small that might be, it takes the first step in order to be able to get to the second.
Well said. Get started as we get to close the program. But John Phelan and Tracy Petrakis from Hyland and Lisa Chambers from Tech Corps, it's been fantastic listening to you all. And thank you for being part of this important conversation during Computer Science Education Week. For the Founders Focus, I'm Gary Beach. Thank you for joining us today.